Everything in Resident Evil began with a single flower. From that flower came the Progenitor Virus, the T virus, parasite, and ultimately the entire world of Resident Evil. If you want to truly understand the Resident Evil timeline, this is where it begins. Hello everyone, and welcome to this episode of Biohazard Archive. My name is Nathan. This coming February, Resident Evil 9 will finally be released. As a franchise with nearly 30 years of history, Resident Evil has expanded far beyond a single game series, spanning over 20 mainline and spin-off titles, along with CG films, comics, and novels. Layer by layer, these works have come together to form a vast and complex Resident Evil universe. After the release of Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil Village in 2017 and beyond, Capcom revisited and revised parts of the series' earlier lore, which lead to inconsistencies and, in some cases, outright retcons. On top of that, the wave of recent remakes has trimmed, rewritten, and restructured content from older entrants, making it increasingly difficult for players to piece together the entire story on their own. But that's exactly why this series exists. Through a chronological breakdown, I will help reconstruct the full history of Resident Evil, building a timeline that is as complete and coherent as possible. And because the cast is so massive, beyond familiar protagonists like Leon and Claire, there are key antagonists like Spencer and Dr. James Marcus, plus many crucial figures buried in background lore. I will also weave character stories into the timeline as we go. Even if you were watched plenty of Resident Evil analyses before, I'm confident you will still find details here you may have missed or never heard at all. Of course, many creators have previously explored the Resident Evil timeline, while all footage, research, and narration in this series are my own. I do build upon the groundwork laid by others, standing on the shoulders of giants, so to speak. And if you notice any omissions or inaccuracies, feel free to share your thoughts and corrections in the comments. If you enjoy this kind of deep dive content, feel free to like and subscribe. With that said, let's begin our journey into the world of Resident Evil. Biohazard. To better understand the overall narrative, I divide the Resident Evil timeline into three major periods: before 1998, the year 1998 itself, and everything that followed. Whether by fate or sheer coincidence, it was in 1998 that nearly every figure who would shape the course of Resident Evil history found their paths converging. In many ways, 1998 stands as a true singularity in Resident Evil history. Its importance great enough to be considered year zero for the entire series. But for now, we will set that moment aside and refrain from diving into what exactly happened in Raccoon City. To truly understand the cause and consequences of that disaster, we first need to go further back and make sense of everything that came before 1998. So, where does it all begin? What is the true origin of Resident Evil? And how are the infamous T virus, parasitic organisms, and the mold connected to one another? To answer these questions, we have to trace the timeline all the way back to the distant Neolithic era, and start by uncovering the source of the Progenitor Virus, the ancestor of the T virus. All things began with a flower that humanity was never meant to consume. It bloomed quietly beneath the earth, something that should have remained forever unrelated to humankind. This was a distant Neolithic era, deep within underground caverns in West Africa. In the future, this flower would come to be known as the Stairway to the Sun. Nearby, an Ndipaya tribesman was suffering from extreme hunger. When he saw the beautiful flower, he barely hesitated, never stopping to consider whether it was edible before placing it into his mouth. What he did not know was that Stairway to the Sun was poisonous. However, the flower did not bring him death. Instead, through its toxic properties, it granted him abilities far beyond those of ordinary humans. This survivor was soon revered by his people, hailed as a god, and crowned as the Sun King. This chosen Ndipaya built stone traps and complex mechanisms far ahead from their time. To improve life within the caverns, these chosen ones discovered a unique reflective material that redirected sunlight below ground, illuminating the once dark tunnels as brightly as day. In time, this technology was adapted for military use as well. High-energy light beams, strikingly similar to modern lasers, built to repel outside invaders. This technological leap ushered the Ndipaya into an era of unprecedented prosperity. Centered around the Stairway to the Sun, they developed a tradition both unique and merciless. Anyone who aspired to become the Sun King had to endure a series of brutal trials. And the most critical step was always the same: consuming the stairway to the sun itself. Like a phoenix plunging into flame, they allowed their bodies to merge with the flower's toxic power. The outcome was always one of two possibilities: death or rebirth. As for why such a highly advanced Ndipaya civilization ultimately fell into decline, we can find clues in the writing of the explorer Henry Travis, particularly in his work Natural History Survey. During his fifth expedition into Africa, Travis inadvertently stumbled upon a vast underground complex and personally witnessed an ongoing ritual: the selection of a new Ndipaya leader. At that time, the Ndipaya Empire stood at a critical moment of succession. Two claimants to the throne, each backed by their own followers, erupted into violent conflict, and the struggle quickly escalated until the entire underground city was swallowed by chaos. After a prolonged stalemate, neither side could claim victory, so they made a final decision: the stairway to the sun would judge them. Each would consume the flower, and life or death would determine who was worthy to become the true Sun King. But this time, the ritual did not unfold as it always had. Perhaps the flower's toxicity had changed over the ages. Perhaps the claimants' bodies were no longer comparable to those of their ancient predecessors. Either way, neither received the Sun King's blessing. Instead, both mutated violently on the spot, bodies swelling beyond control, minds collapsing into madness, until they became two massive, mindless creatures that tore into each other beside the secret flower altar. This battle may well represent the first clearly recorded bioterror incident in human history, and Henry Travis never realized that what he was documenting would become the Ndipaya Empire's final succession. Both claimants ultimately died, unable to withstand the flower's toxicity, and when the fighting ended, grotesque creatures soon emerged, still vaguely human in shape, yet twisted by tendril-like growths, relentlessly hunting the remaining survivors as shattered corpses littered every corner of the city. Faced with a catastrophe that had completely spiraled out of control, Ndipaya were forced to abandon the subterranean life they had maintained for thousands of years, fleeing to the surface or into the surrounding swampland. The stair to the sun altar, once a symbol of divine authority, and now the source of the disaster itself, was sealed away by the survivors using architectural technicals and mechanical systems far beyond their era, never to be approached again. With that, the Ndipaya Empire officially came to an end. At this point, the story of Ndipaya Empire comes to the end. If you are familiar with Resident Evil, you may have already realized this. The Stairway to the Sun is the origin of the Progenitor Virus, and every stair of the T-Virus we know today is merely a descendant of it. But here's the problem. In the world of Resident Evil, viruses are not the only means of control. There is something that doesn't immediately turn people into monsters, yet can leave them completely controlled while they remain fully conscious. That something is the Plaga parasite. In the next episode, we will explore why Plaga is the force that truly changed the course of the Resident Evil universe. If you don't want to miss this complete Resident Evil timeline, consider subscribing to Biohazard Archives. We'll continue in the next episode.